KBCC.org. Registration for the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, begins at 9 a.m. and the workshop concludes at 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. This is a community call to action from the California Black Chamber of Commerce and KBLA Talk 1580.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting a movement of people. It's like we dancing to the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the poor where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify with you and God in time my best align.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
How can I be a better father, son, a better grandson, honoring Fannie Lou's and the Fred Hamptons, the Harriets, the chariots that carry us to various areas that marry us to progress. Yeah, we the harvest, the lovely days at midnight marauders, even through charges and days of darkness.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and White House correspondent. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Be sure to follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or just tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580, and there we are for your listening pleasure. Again, be sure to subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you'll never, ever, ever miss an episode. Now, listen, this has been quite a day. A little bit later, I'm going to tell you about my my trip to the White House today, to the National Prayer Service at the White House. Lots to share there. And in our second hour, you'll hear from Michael Steele, co-host of MSNBC's new show, The Weeknight, which premieres on May 5th at 7 p.m. on MSNBC. Listen to his reaction to the president's first 100 days, some of the more spicy interviews he's done most recently, but also listen to his reaction to Vice President Kamala Harris's address to the Emerge group in San Francisco just yesterday. So much to talk about with that Michael Steele in the second hour. But in this hour, we'll be talking with Andrea O'Neill. She is a former senior staffer in the Biden-Harris White House. She has more than a few things to say about Trump's first 100 days, and we can't wait to get her perspective. But first, it's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines. It's time for your national news roundup. And kicking us off, lots of protests across the country. There was a huge protest just outside the White House today as I was leaving. Thousands rally against Trump and Musk in a nationwide May Day protest. USA Today is reporting that thousands of people marched near the White House as a part of this nationwide protest against the Trump administration, its policies, and the billionaires supporting them in what organizers are calling a war on working people. Over 1,000 demonstrations and rallies were scheduled in every state and abroad, most being held May 1st, historically known as May Day, or International Workers' Day. The volunteer-led 50501 movement, which spurred other nationwide protests this year, helped organize the demonstrations along with labor unions, student groups, and other grassroots organizations. One of the larger protests kicked off here in D.C. I was just telling you, I literally walked right into it as I was walking out of the White House gates. The May Day Movement USA rally on the National Mall. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she spoke to demonstrators in New York City. And in Philadelphia, Senator Bernie Sanders joined the Workers Over Billionaires rally hosted by the city's AFL-CIO chapters. Organizers say that the protests are centering on opposition to President Trump and billionaire supporters, including Elon Musk, who's led the Department of Government Efficiency's slashing of the federal workforce. Organizers accuse the Trump administration, Musk, and their wealthy backers of attempting to erase labor rights, break our unions, and silence immigrant voices. And so, look, folks ain't out there messing around. It's a massive protest across the country, over 1,000 protests across the country and abroad. Yeah, the people are speaking. But Trump is also speaking. He's speaking to Waltz and Secretary Rubio. And you know what he did today? He replaced Waltz with Rubio, at least for now, after a series of missteps. I don't know about you, but for me, it almost seems like failing forward. I don't know how many people can find themselves involved in a scandal at work where you shared some highly sensitive information in a place that you shouldn't have shared highly sensitive information. And not only do you get to keep your job, but you get a little bit of a promotion. I think it's a promotion from National Security Advisor to UN Ambassador. The Washington Post is reporting that President Trump ordered the biggest personnel shakeup of his new administration today, replacing his National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who will carry out the job on an interim basis while also serving as the nation's top diplomat. Trump said he is nominating Waltz as the UN ambassador. So as if Marco Rubio didn't have enough to do as Secretary of State. And if I remember correctly, he is also the interim USAID administrator. Because remember, they fired folks from USAID, and Marco Rubio assumed that responsibility. The decision reflects Trump's disappointment with Waltz over his inadvertent inclusion of a journalist on a group chat about military operations in Yemen, and broader frustration over Waltz's appointment of staffers viewed as disloyal to the president. But in choosing to nominate him as the UN ambassador, a job that requires Senate approval, Trump has set the stage for a contentious confirmation process that will allow Democrats to grill Waltz over the opening months of Trump's presidency and compel sworn testimony on a range of sensitive matters, including immigration, tariff policy, military operations, and diplomacy. It also marks the first time in decades that a U.S. president has appointed the same person to be a Secretary of State and National Security Advisor since President Richard Nixon. He gave those responsibilities to Henry Kissinger, entrusting one man with extraordinary powers over America's domestic and foreign security apparatus. And so Henry Kissinger is the only other person who's done that. So we're going to see how that works out. Marco Rubio already has his hands full. Finally, from D.C. to North Carolina, the GOP takes over the North Carolina election board, boosting chances of reversing the high court race. Now, listen up. We talk about how elections have consequences. We talk about that all the time. Elections have consequences. Well, Republicans took over North Carolina's election board today, boosting their chances of reversing the results of a November election and expanding their majority on the state Supreme Court. Remember, so much of what Republicans are trying to achieve happens in the courts. They know a lot of the stuff they're proposing is not legal. But as long as they can find a judge somewhere that can say it is, they win. The swing state has been considered, a hot spot for a political and legal fight since last fall, when Republicans won the state's presidential electoral votes, but lost the races for governor, attorney general, and a seat on the state's high court. Now, just after the election, Republicans who control the state legislature, you know what they did? They passed a law shifting the power to appoint election board members from the Democratic governor to the Republican state auditor. That's what they did. And so Governor Josh Stein, he has sued over the change, and a panel of judges last week, they blocked the measure. But on Wednesday, an appeals court lifted the lower court's decision while it considers the case. And so that gave Auditor Dave Bullock the chance to make appointments. And guess what he did? He placed not one, not two, but 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats on the 5-member board on Thursday. Remember, a lot of this stuff is going to come down to the courts. And Republicans are laser focused on the courts. By hook or crook, they are determined to win in the courts. When we come forward, we're shifting gears. I'm looking forward to welcoming back Andrea M. O'Neill. She's a former senior White House official in the Biden-Harris White House. She, of course, worked for the Domestic Policy Council, and she has a thing or two to say about Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, and we can't wait to hear it. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Andrea M. O'Neill when we come forward.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You got to live in the reality, because this is it. Every day you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial, because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle, and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is, we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
It's me, Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash. I see those dry elbows, baby. But don't worry, get moisturized right in the shower. So hydrated you can skip the lotion after.
Don't wanna see it dry no more. Skin so moisturized with body wash.
Look at you now. No more dry skin. Your skin gets the moisture it craves with
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
What? All the budget has to be used now? And we can use all the media buy?
Javier's marketing firm just got its dream funding.
Okay, ideas. Bobbleheads? No. T-shirt cannon? I seriously need some help here.
He needs to find marketing managers who are worth every dollar.
I need Indeed.
Indeed, you do. Sponsoring a job on Indeed gives it a visibility boost so you can hire faster. Redeem your $75 credit at Indeed.com/credit. Terms and conditions apply.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hit me! National news, the consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and really delighted to welcome back Andrea M. O'Neill. She is a former senior White House official, that is the Biden-Harris White House, where she worked for the Domestic Policy Council, somebody with over 20 years of experience in government, Wall Street, and social impact. I couldn't think of a better person to button up this week talking to than you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be back and at a pivotal time. There's a lot of news happening, and the 100-day milestone is important.
It is very important, and let's start there. There are so many issues that we can talk about, and we'll talk about as many of them as we can, but what will you remember the most about Trump's first 100 days? You have sat in that White House, you have convened in that White House. As I mentioned, you were staff to the Domestic Policy Council, and so you're used to having a lot of issues you have to tend to on your bingo card. What will you remember the most about Trump's first 100 days?
What I think is foundational is the philosophy by which this administration came in to deconstruct the administrative state and all of the dismantling of federal programs, firing of federal workers, a fair amount of lawlessness and usurping of congressional power, consolidation of executive power, to get things done that are really harmful to the American people and are antithetical to what we consider under the Biden-Harris administration to be the foundational cornerstones of democracy, which include the idea that government should be a force for good in people's lives, that the power of government and the resources of government should go to eradicating the systemic inequities that prevent people from achieving the American dream. And so one thing that is going to stick out to me especially is the wholesale dismantling of the civil rights protections and architecture as a first order of business. He went after, as an example, the independent arbiters for whistleblowers, like all of the inspector generals at the agencies. He took immediately the civil rights architecture with all of the civil rights officers down to the studs at federal agencies. He told the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to stand down from active litigation that it had in the courts, or in some cases changed position and abandoned the people's business in front of the courts that was fighting against bad actors, was fighting against racial discrimination. He took over the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, right? That's an independent board that straddles terms and is supposed to be bipartisan. This is the litigator of when there's workplace discrimination, right? When bad actors are, especially with racial discrimination, in private spaces, they're supposed to be held accountable to the EEOC. So all of these proactive compliance mechanisms that were the protection, the frontline protections, especially for Black people in the post-civil rights era, attacking those even down to the President Lyndon's 1965 executive order, right, which mandated that private businesses doing business with the federal government must comply with civil rights law, right? Just kind of took that by his own pen, revoked that 1965 executive order, which was really a signal to the marketplace that you can be a discriminatory employer and the federal government is no longer going to come after you for being one of those and still get federal funding and federal business. So, that's really, really foundational, especially to Black people at this time.
Very much so. Very much so. I think one executive order that, in my view, is not getting nearly the attention that it should is this executive order that promises to unleash law enforcement. As you might know, and for some of our leaders, learners, and listeners who do not know, this Monday, President Trump, he issued another executive order. This one is titled, quote, "Strengthening and Unleashing America's Law Enforcement to Pursue Criminals and Protect Innocent Citizens." As the ominous unleashing in the title makes clear, the order's proposals, like so many tough on crime approaches, are far more cruel and punitive, and more focused on that than actually reducing crime. The Biden-Harris administration fell short of being able to sign the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act into law because, Congress, particularly the Senate, failed to act. But President Biden did sign an executive order around policing. He did as much as he could with his authority, his legal authority, while in office, separate and apart from Congress. Help us understand how troubling this executive order is for anybody and everybody that has been fighting for criminal justice reform, for folks who have members of their family and neighborhood that have been entangled in an unjust criminal justice system. Talk to us about how serious this is and why you suspect it's not getting nearly as much attention as it should.
Well, I think part of their strategy over the last 100 days is to flood the zone with so much news that it's hard to pay attention to one bad thing. And they also put up a lot of distractions. So the thing that is probably the most terrible makes the least amount of news while people are being distracted by other kinds of things like, Gulf of America, et cetera. This policing executive order, you're exactly right. President Biden, in the breach with Congress over the stalling of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, signed an executive order that on the tenets, and one of the most important things was in the history of our country, we were at the precipice of having a national federal law enforcement misconduct database. All federal agencies have started to populate that database, and we had extension funding through the Department of Justice to work with local police districts and other state and local law enforcement agencies to leverage that database in their own hiring practices. So we could get away from what has been the narrative over and over again of police officers who are committing violence against community members being passed around to different police districts and being hired. So that would have been something for community protection. That database no longer exists. It got ripped out as part of the administration's efforts when they revoked the Biden administration order. And more importantly, to your point, this unleashes law enforcement to infringe on people's rights, maybe to stomp on their Fourth Amendment rights, the stop and frisk era, consent decrees, all the things that were in place to go after bad actors in the system, to prosecute them. It creates a even higher threshold for qualified immunity. It allows for a fair amount of vigilantism and militarism on the local level. and because of how these police resources are being allocated now. And there's more impunity because they have more legal protections when there are police misconducts.
I mean, right away when I first read about this, I thought of Tyree Nichols.
Yes.
And I think it was the Scorpion unit in the Memphis Police Department that had a track record of using many of the same tactics on other citizens. And what is so troubling, I mean, there's so much about this executive order that is troubling. And I say this as a Black man who has been in a situation where police, and the San Francisco Police Department in particular, where police, had drawn guns mistakenly, thinking that me and a friend fit the description of. So this is personal.
Yes.
I'm sure many of us know, a Black or brown man in particular,
yes,
that can unfortunately relate to this. But, I think what is so, troubling about this is that it empowers police officers to use tactics that are more about exerting control than advancing public safety.
Correct. No knock warrants, like all of those things that were kind of off the table or were, at least by the Justice Department, looked at with a more critical eye. The gloves are off, literally and figuratively, and that should terrify everyone.
Well, when we come forward, we are digging deeper into President Trump's first 100-day record. As Andrea mentioned, there are so many headlines coming out of this White House. And, as Vice President Harris mentioned in her remarks yesterday in San Francisco, that they want you to think that they're creating chaos, but this is exactly what they plan to do. This is exactly how they plan to roll things out. As Andrew just mentioned, flood the zone. This is a part of their strategy. But that's why we have programs like this. This is why we have shows like this and a community of leaders, learners, and listeners where we're able to go beyond the headlines with leaders on the front line like Andrea M. O'Neill. More with her when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you've tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
Wind is blowing cold. Have we lost our way tonight? Have we lost our hope to sorrow?
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. President Trump says HBCUs should not worry about federal cuts, claiming he secured them more funding than ever. At a News Nation town hall, he pointed to his executive order ensuring HBCUs receive maximum support and long-term financing. A new San Francisco musical called Luigi centers on alleged CEO shooter Luigi Mangione. The 26-year-old is accused of shooting United Healthcare CEO and is portrayed alongside real-life cellmates Sam Bankman-Fried and Sean Diddy Combs. Indiana Governor Mike Braun is distancing himself from Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith's praise of the 3/5 compromise, calling it a distraction. The Indiana Black Legislative Caucus and other groups have condemned Beckwith's remarks as offensive and out of touch. And Black D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says Trump-era spending cuts are hitting D.C. hard, calling it the Doge economy. She warns tough decisions on city services are ahead. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Starting in Sherman Oaks, Ventura Freeway 101 eastbound right at Woodman Avenue. An accident involving a car and an SUV just cleared from the slow lanes. East 101, you're off and on the brakes from Lost Hills Road to the North Hollywood Freeway split. Near West Covina on the 10 westbound before Grand Avenue, a 3-vehicle collision just cleared from one of the left-hand lanes. 91 eastbound at Central Avenue, this is where a car and a box truck got together. This crash cleared from the left lane, but you're slow from the 110 to the 605.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique, but you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It's another night of elimination drama for LA's NBA fans. Tonight, it's the Clippers' turn to see if they can stay alive in the playoffs. Game 6 between the Clippers and Denver at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The Clippers are down 3-2. They need a win to force a Game 7 in Denver on Saturday. The Clippers are healthy. No players are on their injury list. 7 p.m. tip-off tonight on TNT. The Lakers' season-ending loss to Minnesota Wednesday night had a huge financial impact on a lot of people. More money have been wagered on the Lakers than any other team to win the NBA championship, according to multiple sports books in Vegas. One person bet $100,000 at 10-1 odds that the Lakers would win the title. Mark this date on your calendar, June 29th. That's the deadline for LeBron to decide if he's going to exercise his player option to come back for a 23rd season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 and the California Black Chamber of Commerce invite you to the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. Get certified and register as a new bidder. Sell products and services to the state. Learn about pre-bid events and more, and it's all free. All you have to do is sign up at www.calbcc.org. That's www.calbcc.org. Registration for the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, begins at 9 a.m. and the workshop concludes at 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. This is a community call to action from the California Black Chamber of Commerce and KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Take a listen to what Stephen A. Smith said yesterday.
Salem State University, which is an HBCU. I'm fully aware of the contributions that you've made to HBCUs in the past. There is a concern, however, that with all the things going on in this day and time, that there will be a cut in federal contributions to HBCUs. Should HBCUs be very concerned about you making cuts in that regard?
Not at all. And let me just tell you, I'm glad you brought it. Historically black colleges and universities, I saved them, Stephen. They were going out of business. They came to me, about 50 people that headed up, and they came to me the first year, and I took care of them. I took care of the black colleges and historically black HBCU. I took care of them. You know that better than anybody. Then they came to me the second year, and I said, wait a minute. Why do you keep coming back? I saw you guys, and they were great guys. Some of them to this day are still really friendly. And by the way, they love Trump, every one of them. They came to me the second time.
Well, you're giving them money.
They came to me the second time. They came to me the second time, and I was surprised to see him.
I got it, Mr. President.
Yeah, just to finish it. They came to me the third, and I said, fellas, you need long-term. I got the historically black colleges and universities. I got them more money than they ever dreamt possible. And they're in great shape now, and they have long-term financing. Nobody did that but Donald Trump.
Okay.
You are listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and you were just listening to President Trump on News Nation. It was a News Nation town hall yesterday with Chris Cuomo and Bill O'Reilly and Stephen A. Smith. And I think we have an opportunity here to set the record straight. Set the record straight. And so, Andrea, the floor is yours. Set the record straight. Has President Trump done more to fund HBCUs than any other president in history?
I'm going to, as he would say, fake news. The Biden administration gave $17 billion in aggregate to HBCUs. That's the most in American history by a mile, even under President Obama and President Trump. The critical difference and the thing that he's ripped out, so we'll see what his forward legacy on HBCU contributions are. But one of the main availability under the Biden administration was a new program started by the president, a new executive order that allowed for HBCUs to do business with the federal government as contracting entities. And so it wasn't just the Department of Education grants that are being given. HBCUs could, under the Biden administration, compete for research dollars under the CHIPS and Science Act, were targeted for capacity building initiatives. As you may recall, at the end of the administration, and a independent entity finally elevated an HBCU to Research 1 R1 status. Howard University, the first HBCU to attain that status again, which is a critical step in HBCUs being able to compete fairly in a marketplace that has underfunded them, that has not allowed them to compete fairly for research dollars in particular. There were many, many efforts, both under the American Rescue Plan. HBCUs were provided additional Pell Grant support, which we know is important for low-income college students who rely on federal assistance and financial aid. We upsize those Pell Grants, and HBCUs matriculate much more low-income students than other types of universities. It is a wealth generator. It is a social mobility generator. We know that critical masses of our Black professional class, like doctors and lawyers and engineers, are coming out of HBCUs. And so it's fundamentally not true. He has a legacy of, yes, signing a law that kind of helps bolster HBCUs, but all in, the funding and the types of funding and the availability for HBCUs to be strengthened and to compete fairly happened under the Biden administration. So we will wait and see what happens under this administration. We are cautiously optimistic that he signed an executive order that stood back up the initiative, but that does not mean the funding mechanisms will be in place, because those folks are gone because Doge fired them.
Well, that's why we have you here, to help set the record straight. And just staying with education for a moment, NPR reporting that the Education Department is stopping $1 billion in funding for school mental health. The Trump administration says it will stop paying out, that's $1 billion with a B, in federal grants that school districts across the country have been using to hire mental health professionals, including counselors and social workers. The U.S. Department of Education is telling impacted districts that the Biden administration, in awarding the grants, violated the letter or purpose of federal civil rights law. The grants were a part of a 2022 bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I'm sure you remember that, Andrea. That was a bill that was passed in the aftermath of the school shooting in Uvalde. And the bill, among other things, it poured federal dollars into schools to address rising concerns about student mental health crisis. That was only a couple years ago. And so make it make sense. Why would they, go after funding for mental health support in schools? They say that, they want the Department of Education to just kind of get out of the way and shift the resources to state and local school districts. I can't tell. It feels like they are saying everything and nothing.
Well, correct. They're dismantling the Department of Education. States' rights is not a real thing in this scenario. The Department of Education does not dictate curriculum, as an example of some of the fake news that they're promulgating. And a lot of what Department of Education does is try to create parity among school districts. So if you're a Title I school that has critical underfunding, has a lot of students who are below the poverty level, that need nutrition assistance and other kinds of wraparound social services, those districts were prioritized under the Biden administration to make sure that they had what they needed. We know that mental health, especially out of the pandemic, and students being left behind in critical areas in social development and academic development, needed other resources. And so the Title I efforts coming out of, as you mentioned, that act, as well as the American Rescue Plan, were meant to both, by the way, on the 70th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, which we celebrated last year in 2024, was looking at the racial segregation that still exists in the schools and the efforts of the Department of Education through grant funding, new funds, new types of criteria for those funds, helping to drive teacher diversity, helping to drive student outcomes, helping to, as an example, Department of Education has did have an entire department for student data and school performance. That has now been eradicated. And so this is part of, I think, a dismantling Department of Education wholesale generally about what this administration's priorities are. But it's also an attack on, again, the civil rights and civil liberties of our public education students. And we all should be hyper vigilant about what's to come, because really this administration in the first 100 days is just setting up the chessboard and setting up the architecture for the things they actually want to do. And that should be really concerning to everybody.
Yeah. I mean, even Vice President Harris just yesterday in her remarks in a moment of straight talk said that things are likely to get worse before they get better. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to Vice President Harris's remarks yesterday, but I want to give you an opportunity to share anything that might have stood out to you as speculation continues to swirl around whether or not Vice President Harris will make another bid for the White House in 2028 or potentially run for California governor.
I won't comment on her political forward life. I think she deserves her strategic rest just like everyone else. But the way that she outlaid what is her signature agendas, which was making the economy work for the American people. She has some important and critical things to say, which are that all of these tariffs and other kinds of economic destruction that we're seeing now, those aren't baked into on the ground family life yet. And so by the time we get to the summer and the fall, when inventory is lower and costs are higher and the economic, we already started to see some of the economic data not be as good as we predicted, right? Folks on the ground are not feeling that yet. And so I think what she's asking us to do is be mindful and to gird ourselves, which would be maybe some more downstream effects that are going to hit our pocketbooks and hit our daily lives and hit regular costs of goods and just our economic equation when people are already on a shoestring and people are already stretched thin and do not have enough resources and things are going to get worse. We hope that's not the case, but we should be prepared.
Our thanks to Andrea M. O'Neill, former senior White House official, Biden-Harris White House official, that is, with the Domestic Policy Council. Always feel a little smarter when you come to visit us. Thank you so much for your work and your witness. Come back again soon.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, the quiet part out loud when we come forward.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
At Providence, health equity is the foundation of our community health initiatives, ensuring care reaches those who need it most. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in America. African Americans face a higher risk of life-threatening issues like hypertension, the number one cause of stroke. 55% of Black adults have high blood pressure. The good news is 80% of heart disease is preventable with healthy lifestyle changes and patient-centered care provided by the Providence Heart and Vascular Institute. From routine screenings to advanced procedures, Providence provides comprehensive care for the heart conditions that overly impact our community by ensuring patients receive treatments tailored to their needs. Let's stop the trend of being 30% more likely to die from heart-related problems. Take charge of your heart health with world-class cardiologists who deliver the compassionate care you deserve. Visit providence.org/SoCalHeart. That's providence.org/SoCalHeart to request an appointment.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and I saw the Washington Post report on this small town of all places in Montana. And I thought it was so fitting, especially, this being the end of the week, to really sort of put into focus, some of the rightful anxiety that people are experiencing. Small town has thrived on federal jobs. This small town in Montana, but now comes the Trump cuts. You see, in an era of rural decline, this town of 5,000, it touts art galleries and upscale cafes. It's Main Street with a homegrown department store, still going strong after 75 years. Remains a draw not just for locals, but for the tourists who come to explore the surrounding mountain wilderness. But a lot of people worry that the future is at risk. Hamilton has depended for decades on what seemed a reliable economic foundation, the federal government. After all, they employ hundreds at a world-renowned scientific laboratory and in the Bitterroot National Forest. But right now, staff and funding cuts are shaking up things in Hamilton. They are shaking this pocket of deep red Montana, prompting its leaders to warn President Trump, to warn him that his administration of dangerous safety and economic consequences, and sending citizens to the street to protest. As one saying, there goes, locals either have a PhD or a GED. That's what they say in Hamilton. And, it's a recognition of the outsized role that the federal employment in that area plays, where most alternatives pay little, despite a median price of about $600,000 for a home. Hamilton leaders, they fear that researchers at Rocky Mountain Laboratories and forest managers who lose their jobs are likely to leave, taking their salaries and their families and their firefighting skills and their community contributions with them. This dynamic has made Hamilton, Montana, a prime example of the ripple effect of the administration's efforts. Their efforts to drastically shrink the government and the consequences of pink slips always reach beyond individual employees fired. Yet in this town, and I'm sure towns like this across America, they feel magnified. And so it's important for us to note that the scope of the firings and the buyouts, it's unclear because the White House hasn't made numbers public. Remember, we've seen all these headlines coming out saying, the clock is ticking. The president is offering federal workers a buyout. Sign up quick. Well, the White House hasn't made those numbers public. And at the lab in Hamilton, Montana, a scientist who's keeping a tally count of at least 25 of 573 people gone. Most of them support staff. 14 others are expected to leave or be terminated by June. It's according to this scientist in Hamilton, Montana, who of course spoke on conditions of anonymity related to the story that the Washington Post recently published. At the National Forest in Hamilton, Montana, some 30 to 40 of the 208 employees, they've been fired or have left through various incentive programs. That's what the local federal workers union has said. And a spokesperson for the Agriculture Department, which includes the Forest Service, they said that staffing numbers continue to be finalized. Operational firefighters were not offered voluntary retirements and deferred resignations. And the National Institutes of Health did not respond to requests for comment about their staff cuts. I think most Americans are fine with, cutting, any, jobs or functions that are duplicative, right? Well, we're already doing that. We already have somebody doing that. So to have, multiple people hired to do the same job, I think most folks would say, okay, it's reasonable that, okay, you need to restructure, right? But the issue is that these firings are indiscriminate. There hasn't been a feasibility study to look at where those duplication of efforts are, what may happen if folks aren't in that function. None of that. It's chaos. And here in Washington, D.C., where I'm broadcasting live today, D.C. is starting to feel it. In fact, folks here in D.C. are referring to it as the Doge economy. But the difference is here in the nation's capital, we may have better odds at being able to withstand this chaos than the people, the rural people in Hamilton, Montana. Wasn't it just a few months ago during the 2024 election where folks said we're not doing enough to help, to support our fellow Americans in rural America? Well, if Hamilton, Montana is any indication, it doesn't seem like the victor of the 2024 presidential election is helping. It sounds like the policies of this administration that are just getting stood up are already starting to hurt the people of Hamilton, Montana. People didn't vote for indiscriminate cuts. Who would vote to cut their job? Who would vote to force people out of their small town, to divest from their community? And is there a reason all of this has to happen at once? You got the mass firings that are happening. You got the Department of Education that's shutting down. You got $1 billion in support for mental health counselors that's being taken away. You've got federal research dollars that are being pulled nilly-willy left and right. You got to ask yourself, why is all of this happening all at once? Why is all of this happening at breakneck speed? Is it the sign that maybe, just maybe, the folks in charge don't care? Don't care. That's not what you do when you care. We care. We care about the people in Hamilton, Montana, the people in Los Angeles, California, and Altadena, California, and DC, and everywhere in between. And we're going to keep uplifting these stories so that we all understand what's really going on and we get about the work of handling our business. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. MSNBC's Michael Steele joins me in the next hour. More when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Rapper Kanye West and his wife are back together and planning to sue his former dentist for malpractice. The dentist is accused of giving West nitrous oxide and propofol, fraudulently billing him and abandoning care. A new executive order from President Trump may challenge California's ban on suspensions for willful defiance in schools. Critics say it threatens efforts to reduce racial disparities in discipline, while supporters argue for local control over school policies. President Trump says he supports Stephen A. Smith running for president.